Well, we are almost to the end of 2025, and with a new year comes a new Florida legislative session. Lawmakers will meet on January the 13th, 2026, and debate bills for 60 days. One of the biggest items on their docket is property taxes, which is raising plenty of alarms in the real estate industry. 4 out of 7 proposed constitutional amendments aimed at reducing property taxes for homeowners have now moved through House committees. The Republican-controlled State Affairs Committee voting along party lines. The proposals include House Joint Resolution 201, which eliminates all non-school related taxes for homesteaded properties. It's projected to cut local government revenue by $14.1 billion in that first year. New economic analysis from Realtor.com shows that eliminating homestead property taxes could raise home values 7 to 9%. It's a windfall for existing property homeowners, but it is likely to hinder entry into home ownership for the very first-time home buyer. I'd like to start with you, Janelle. There's the good part, and then there's the concerning part. What should voters be looking at when they're weighing in and making their own decisions?
So, I mean, first of all, any type of study on how much of an impact something is going to have, obviously that's an estimate, right? Mm-hmm. It could be more, it could be less, we don't know. But one thing is sure, there is the very real possibility that if we were to eliminate property taxes, it would increase the cost of home ownership for people who are first entering the homeowner market, right? And that is especially shocking and worrisome, considering the fact that property taxes account in most cases, on average nationally, for less than 1% of your home's value. Even in the places where property taxes are the highest, you're talking 1.5%, 2.5%. Mm-hmm. So the difference there is pretty big. You are not negating the increased cost of a home by not having to pay property taxes by those numbers. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's something to look at because we already have an affordability crisis on our hands. I think that there's also a little bit of an issue with supporters who say that this is something that could be, that local governments are living outside their means, that this will, even without this revenue.
A lot of their focus is on efficiency.
Right. Local government would still have more in their coffers than they did in 2020. And while that may very well be the case in most cities, it does not account for inflation, right? We all feel it. We all know it. So whether or not this is actually the tax savings that people are touting it to be, mm-hmm. I think that's what people need to be critically evaluating right now.
And on the other side, you have the retirees, many who say that because they are hurting with inflation, everything else is going up, that not having property taxes on their home would be a huge relief. Danny, I'd like your opinion, and followed by Mitch on that.
Absolutely, and so you really never own your home. As a homesteaded property owner, for the rest of your life, you are beholden to the government to own your home. If you don't pay your taxes, they can seize your property. It's important to understand this is eliminating property taxes on homesteaded property, yes. Not property that you own for rental, not not investment property, not commercial property. This is for your homestead, and I would kind of go against a little bit on Realtor.com and saying it's going to increase the prices by 7 to 10%. Okay, we're in a market now that prices will not increase. We're in a buyer's market. So people are having a hard time right now selling their homes as they are.
And you're seeing that as a realtor.
Completely. But if you think about this, so eliminating property taxes on your homesteaded property is going to make my property more valuable. That's not a bad thing either as a homeowner. So would you rather be paying property taxes or getting a better investment in your property? Mm-hmm. I understand the local governments. I have some concern. But local government is supposed to provide for infrastructure and safety. For many years, we've gone beyond that in our governments. Mm-hmm. So does it allow us to maybe pare down some of that? Maybe.
Mitch?
Yeah, Danny makes the point a lot. It sounds like a lot that the governor's been making, Boyce and Goli has been making on a couple fronts. I would say this, so where are we at right now? About a month before the regular session begins, they passed in this committee, as you mentioned, 4 proposals, all joint resolutions, which are constitutional amendments. Whether we'll see that happen, whether that will be that many in November of next year, far too soon to say. Governor DeSantis says he wants this one. Now, you mentioned actually that one, that's a Kevin Steele supported one that would basically get rid of all homestead non-school related homestead property taxes. That's the most simple one. There are, like I said, 3 others that were passed, but interestingly, only one of those others that passed has a Senate companion right now. Senate hasn't weighed in on this much so far, and that's obviously the other part of the legislature. And I still feel we're very early on, the third inning of this 9-inning ball game, to use a baseball metaphor, in terms of what is actually going to go before the voters and how it's all going to play out. Different counties rely on property taxes more than others do, and so it's not going to be even for each local government and how much they're going to deal with this. Boyce and Goli, the CFO, has made the predicate he's already trying to do the prebuttal, which is that local governments are going to cry and complain that this is going to hurt them so much, especially with public safety. They're saying that none of this will hurt public safety, by the way. They're saying that every one of these measures would not touch police and fire, at least the first year. And so, but he's also laying the predicate, there's excessive government spending going on. And that's something that we're still, by the way, waiting for that DOJ or FAFO audit to come out to actually specifically list that excessive government spending. We haven't seen that yet. We just seen the numbers that Ongolia says is way too much than it was 5 years ago.
And we also have heard from Florida House Speaker Danny Perez, who's been arguing that in October, when the lawmakers proposed 8 different options, to pick from, that the governor was incredibly critical of them. However, they're still waiting for the governor to outline a plan of his own. And
300 days, I believe, was the number.
No, he hasn't said it. And in fact, he was in Tampa this week, and he talked more generically about how he wants this, but he hasn't come close. And, is his office going to write something up and give it to a legislator to push through? The time is moving on this thing. So, he's got to come through pretty quickly.
As a homeowner myself, I would rather enjoy savings on my property insurance than my property taxes.
That's what the Democrats have been saying. They say that's where we should be looking at right now.
And so many voters want insurance reform to be in that legislative session that we're talking about. So many things.